During development of the first 3D Zelda game, Ocarina of Time, Shigeru Miyamoto ran into more than just a few problems. One of the most important was with their design approach to 3D games as a whole. Miyamoto claimed that many people were starting to try and make games that were like movies, where the story is told with long, pre-rendered cutscenes doing all the heavy lifting, something that was previously incredibly difficult or impossible to do in a 2D environment. Miyamoto was adamant that 3D Zelda should instead feature real-time cutscenes, ones using the same environments, models, and lighting as the game itself, created using camera tricks to achieve the feeling of watching a film. Since the days of Ocarina of Time, a lot has changed. Zelda games now do make use of pre-rendered clips, like the memories found in Breath of the Wild, which I think proves Miyamoto's point. For me, collecting memories is one of the weakest parts of that game. Because they're so disconnected from the player's current adventure through Hyrule, they stick out in a way that the cutscenes from previous games didn't. And the fact that they take place a century before the game even starts just exacerbates this problem. But this doesn't mean that the individual quality of Breath of the Wild's cutscenes is any less outstanding. In fact, every single 3D Zelda game, and even some 2D adventures, have their fair share of truly standout cutscenes. So today, let's shine a spotlight on the cutscenes of the Zelda games, and talk about 10 of my personal favourites. Obviously, these picks are my own opinions, and there's not really a system to this list either. It's just a few of my very biased, personal takes. But without further ado, let's get into it. Despite what I said about the game's memories, Breath of the Wild's Link and Zelda relationship is one of the best versions of the pairing in the series. Before the Calamity, Link is portrayed as an incredible, overachieving, yet silent warrior, tasked with guarding the princess as her personal knight. Zelda grows to resent Link's silence, projecting her own insecurities onto him and assuming that he must judge her as a failure for her inability to awaken her sacred powers. This tension reaches a head at the Ancient Columns, where Zelda explodes at Link, scolding him and ordering him to leave her alone and return to the castle. But Link doesn't. Silently, he follows his princess as he was sworn to do, Master Sword on his back. The relationship changes, however, once the pair travel to the Gerudo Desert, with Memory 6, Blades of the Yiga. The cutscene opens with Zelda running through open sands, desperately trying to escape an unseen threat. Suddenly, Yiga foot soldiers appear from nowhere, blocking her path, vicious sickles unsheathed and hungry. She turns, but another assailant moves to block her escape. Surrounded, the princess falls to the ground, with no choice but to watch the Yiga's blades draw closer and closer. But just as one moves to strike, as Zelda closes her eyes and expects the end, another blade flashes in the desert sun, and a Yiga foot soldier collapses. The princess opens her eyes to see Link standing over her, the Master Sword live in his hand. Gentle piano notes of the main Zelda theme start to play, and the remaining Yiga retreat in fear from the hero, who stands guard without a word. The cutscene ends focused on Zelda's face, where we can see the princess's change of heart happen. As with most of the memories, Blades of the Yiga is described in Zelda's diary, where she writes, "He saved me. Without a thought for his own life, he protected me from the ruthless blades of the Yiga clan. Though I've been cold to him all this time, taking my selfish and childish anger out on him at every turn, still, he was there for me. I won't ever forget that." It's from this moment that Zelda begins to open up to Link, and it's my favourite cutscene in the game for just that reason. It's a turning point in one of the game's most important subplots, and though it's incredibly simple, it captures the essence of Link's character. No matter the circumstances, he puts his duty and honour first, and has the courage to stand up and defend those who need it most. It's not controversial to say that Fi is quite annoying. She's Link's companion in Skyward Sword, a spirit created long ago by the goddess Hylia with the sole purpose of helping Link on his adventure. She's portrayed almost as a kind of artificial intelligence. She reduces everything to percentages and calculations and shows very little emotion. Yet, in the game's closing moments, just after Link finally lays the Master Sword to rest in the sealed temple, Fi speaks to her master one last time. Technically, this scene is just one part of the game's very long ending cutscene, everything from defeating Demise up to the game's end credits. So I'm bending the rules a little bit here and focusing specifically on Fi's farewell. She explains that when she first awoke, she perceived her task as merely serving the function she was designed for. However, by the end, she now considers the time she spent with Link among the most precious data she has on record. Fi materializes out of the sword one final time, coming face to face with Link to say her final words. At the end of my journey with you, as I prepare to sleep within the Master Sword forever, I experience a feeling I am unable to identify. I lack sufficient data to be sure of my conclusion, but I believe this feeling correlates closest to what your people call happiness. Fi thanks her master one last time before returning to the sword, which falls silent. I've seen the argument a lot that this farewell with Fi feels a bit tacked on at the end of the game, that it's an emotional payoff that was never really earned. And I can understand that. Fi is deliberately very robotic, so this big emotional speech right at the very end is a bit out of the blue. But for me, this final cutscene with the Spirit of the Sword never really was about her specifically. Fi is the Master Sword, and with the game's massive emphasis on motion controls, this sword has never been so important to the identity of one game. Fi's farewell isn't so much about saying goodbye to this particular character, though I do think it succeeds in doing that too. It's about saying goodbye to the game as a whole, to the adventure Skyward Sword has taken you through. Zelda companions are always about helping to bridge the gap between the player and the game's world, and Fi hides this fact least of all. Her function of explaining game mechanics is disguised behind very little personality of her own, yet she's more central to the game itself than perhaps any other companion. So while Fi's farewell can seem like a last-minute attempt to shoehorn in some extra weight to Link's relationship with his companion, it works, for me at least, as a strong emotional payoff at the end of Skyward Sword. Though Fi herself didn't show much personality at all before this moment, it's as much about leaving this adventure behind as it is saying goodbye to Fi. A Link Between Worlds isn't just a spiritual successor to A Link to the Past, it also packs a surprisingly deep story, driven by really interesting characters with believable motivations, like Hilda, the princess of the alternate world of Lorule, who desperately hatches a plan to restore her land to peace, and Ravio, the Lorulean counterpart to Link who lacks his courage. The game reaches its finale in the heart of Lorule Castle, where Hilda finally explains her plans. She begins by telling the story of her country, a world where the people chose to destroy their Triforce to try and escape from the endless wars it caused. However, this plan would spell disaster for Lorule. The Triforce was the foundation of their world, and without it, Hilda's country began to fall into chaos. Lorule looked to be lost, a world doomed to crumble apart without its Triforce, until Hilda learned of another. Hyrule's Triforce, the three triangles of power, wisdom, and courage. Hilda commands Yuganon, the horrific combination of the Lorulean sorcerer Yuga and the freshly resurrected Ganon, to seize the Triforce of Courage from Link. The first phase of the final battle ensues, and Link defeats the beast. A desperate Hilda changes her plan and commands Yuganon to give up its Triforce of Power, but it refuses. Yuganon traps Hilda in a painting and takes her Triforce of Wisdom, now possessing 2/3 of the full artifact. The beast laughs, claiming that it will soon take its place among the gods, and hope seems lost. But Link refuses to give up. He raises his sword hand, and the Triforce of Courage shines out. This single moment is what makes this my favourite cutscene in A Link Between Worlds. Like Blades of the Yiga, it's a brilliant character moment for Link. No matter how much the odds are stacked against him, he refuses to give up. Even when facing a twisted splicing of Yuga and Ganon wielding 2 Triforce pieces, Link stands defiant, showing his own single piece in return. It's one of those moments that just makes it impossible to lose in the final battle, like when Link calmly draws his sword in the face of a bellowing, titanic Calamity Ganon in Breath of the Wild. The game is letting you know that it's about to throw everything at you, but just like Link, you cannot back down. Like Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess ends with Link climbing through Hyrule Castle to find Ganondorf at the top, fully in control of the kingdom's capital. There's a fantastic cutscene where Ganondorf introduces himself, then 2 boss fights, one against the possessed puppet Zelda, and another against Dark Beast Ganon himself, a twisted boar demon who faces off against Wolf Link. But Dark Beast Ganon isn't the end. After his defeat, Ganon's smouldering corpse fades away, and the life force granted to Midna by Zelda is returned. The 2 princesses share a moment together, but this doesn't last long. The castle shakes, and the trio turn around to see a visage, a laughing phantom of Ganondorf's face. Midna closes her eyes, and the pieces of the fused shadow swirl around her. Link tries to intervene, but Midna teleports both him and Zelda away from the castle, just before the fused shadow combines around her. Previously, Midna had only used a splinter of the fused shadow's power to obliterate Zant, but here she summons its full might, and it transforms her, twisting her body into a monstrous, glowing spider. Ganondorf roars at her, but Midna, ancient power surging through her body, floats into the air, summons a golden spear, and lunges towards the dark spirit. Ganon screams, and we cut to white, before fading in on Link and Zelda in Hyrule Field. The pair look around in confusion, before a rumbling in the distance catches their attention. Hyrule Castle explodes in a cloud of stone and dust, presumably shattered by the power of Midna's attack. But when the dust fades, Ganondorf remains. Mounted on a dark horse, the King of Evil stares at them, cloak billowing in the wind. As the horse rears, Ganondorf raises his hand, and clutched in his black gauntlet is Midna's fragment of fused shadow, the piece of the artifact worn by the Twilight Princess as a helmet. And, like it's nothing more than plain stone, Ganondorf tightens his grip, and the fused shadow crumbles. A weapon of unimaginable power, forged in an ancient age by a people so dangerous they were sealed away forever, shatters in Ganondorf's hand like pottery. Without delay, Ganondorf draws the Sword of the Sages once used to execute him, summons his Phantom Riders, and begins charging towards Link and Zelda, where the game's penultimate boss battle takes place. Of course, this cutscene showing Midna's last stand is bookended by other incredible cutscenes and boss fights, but it's this single moment that stands out the most to me. Midna summoning the full fused shadow to use against Ganondorf is amazing, made even better by the fact that it's completely useless. Ganondorf is so many leagues above Zant, and he won't go down that easily. Ocarina of Time is a game about growing up. After collecting the spiritual stones and pulling the Master Sword from its pedestal, Link, and the player, are thrust 7 years into the future, into a cold, unfriendly, adult world, a place tortured by war, where Link's friends are distressed or missing. Of course, Link has the ability to rewind time and continue to adventure through Hyrule as a child, but not forever. The adult era is the only place in which he can make real progress. To save Hyrule and defeat Ganondorf, Link needs to leave his childhood behind and face the real world. And for me, nowhere is this feeling captured better than the small conversation between Link and his best friend, Saria, on the bridge leading out of Kokiri Forest. After the Hero of Time defeats Gohma and the Great Deku Tree withers, Saria is nowhere to be found in the woods. Link steps out of Kokiri Forest, and the first thing you notice is the lack of music. Only the sounds of the forest, birds, insects, and the sighing of the wind. Link runs across the bridge, focused on the task set for him by the Deku Tree, but is stopped by a voice from behind him. Saria, standing with one hand on the bridge's rope support. She says that she knew Link would leave the forest someday, because she knew that, somehow, he was different from the other Kokiri. She asks if the two of them will stay friends forever, then gifts Link one of her prized possessions, her fairy ocarina. Saria says that she hopes Link will think of her when he plays it and come back to visit. Then, without a word, Link turns and sets off for Hyrule Field, leaving Saria alone in the woods. This is such a tiny cutscene, but it's so powerful. While it is just a couple of lines of dialogue between two characters standing silently on a bridge, it perfectly captures the sadness of Ocarina of Time, the agony of growing up and leaving the comfort of childhood behind. For years, I just couldn't get into Majora's Mask. Something about the oppressive, relentless ticking of the clock, the inescapable feeling that every second brings you hurtling closer to the end of the world. For the entire game, the moon hangs above you, its nightmarish gaze fixed firmly downwards on Termina and its people. The moon is unstoppable. Link can delay the inevitable by slowing and resetting the clock, but this is just adding more sand to an hourglass that will, one day, run out. Every cycle, Skull Kid taunts you with the same line. If it's something that can be stopped, then just try to stop it. And every cycle, Link is forced to back down from this challenge and flee into the safety of the past. It should be impossible to save Termina. It's only because Link exists outside of linear time, because he can relive the same days over and over, that Majora's plan can be stopped, by rescuing the 4 giants, primordial beings with immense strength. So, by the time Link has freed the giants, on the night of the 3rd day, on the roof of the clock tower, he doesn't have to fear the moon anymore. When the Skull Kid makes his challenge, Link can answer it by playing the giant song, the Oath to Order. This ancient song calls the giants, who stride from their respective regions on long, thin legs and walk until they meet over Clock Town. Without a word, the deities raise their hands to the sky and catch the moon. This is such a cathartic moment. Finally, the threat that has literally loomed over you for the entire game is over, safe in the arms of the giants. In the calm that follows, the two fairies Tatl and Tael reunite. Tael explains how Majora's Mask took advantage of the Skull Kid, that he was too weak to control its power. And Majora agrees. The music stops, and the mask lifts the Skull Kid's limp body. A puppet that can no longer be used is mere garbage. The mask drops the Skull Kid to the ground. This puppet's role has just ended. The mask flies up and into the moon, whose eyes glow brighter. It begins to force itself downwards, and even the giants begin to strain. Their godlike strength starts to falter under the force of the moon. Tatl suggests rewinding time. Like every cycle before, resetting the clock to give the pair 3 more days to solve the problem. But this is no time for caution. Link makes his decision and chooses to end the cycle, for good or for evil, and follow Majora into the moon for the final boss fight. The Calling of the Giants is my favourite cutscene in Majora's Mask, a game with some really emotional moments, simply because it's the result of an entire game of build-up. Even with all the masks you collect, the weapons you unlock, even with the ability to travel through time, the moon endures as a reminder that you haven't escaped your fate. So the moment when the game comes together and Link can finally answer the Skull Kid's challenge is incredible, made even better by the twist return of Majora leading into the final boss. Link's Awakening managed to squeeze an entire Zelda adventure onto a Game Boy cartridge, cramming a game with a world and story better than it has any right to be onto a handheld system. Though it doesn't have any real cutscenes in the proper sense, it does tell story events in as cinematic a way as it can, like the windfish waking up or Link's conversation with Marin. A little way through the game, Link finds Marin on Taronbo shores. She asks him to sit with her a while, and so the pair sit, looking out onto the endless ocean, seagulls dancing in the sea air. Marin wonders what lies beyond the sea, saying her father insists that there's nothing beyond it, but she disagrees. When Link arrived, she says, her heart skipped a beat. She thought he was a traveller from another land sent to give them a message. Marin says that she wishes she was a seagull so that she could soar across the seas and find distant lands, meet new people. If she wishes to the windfish, she hopes, her dreams will come true. Marin is the emotional centre of Link's awakening. Link comes to realise that the entire island is just a dream, including Marin herself, yet she's so real. She has hopes and dreams. Link knows that the right thing to do is to free the windfish and break its endless sleep, but this will mean destroying everything on Koholint Island, including Marin. But as we see at the very end of the game, if it's completed without dying, Marin seems to have got her wish. After the game's end credits, we see a winged Marin flying through the sky, accompanied with the sounds of seagulls. The DX and Switch versions make this clearer, showing a seagull taking to the air alongside an image of Marin's face. Perhaps not everything was just a dream. This cutscene is a highlight of Link's awakening for me because it further establishes Marin as a real person in an illusory world. Though she's just the figment of a sleeping god's imagination, she questions the nature of her reality. What is across the seemingly endless ocean? Is Koholint all there is? Twilight Princess can claim a massive number of the series' most epic moments, like the failed execution of Ganondorf, the story of the interlopers, or Midna's final battle. But my absolute favourite Twilight Princess cutscene, and one of my favourite moments in any Zelda game, takes place while the Ordon children are taking shelter in Kakariko Village. The cutscene opens with Tallow and Beth talking in a clearing. Without warning, King Bulblin and his retinue storm into the village, the armoured Bulbos beneath them kicking up clouds of dust beneath their hooves. Tallow turns and flees the approaching stampede, but Beth freezes, petrified in the face of the rampaging monsters. Colin can do nothing but watch from the side of the road. His whole life he's been a coward, bullied by the other Ordon children for being weak and scared. He could run and hide, shelter from the danger in one of Kakariko's houses or shops, but he doesn't. This time, Colin chooses bravery. He chooses to be like Link and face the danger head on. Just before the Bulblins reach Beth, Colin darts into the road, shoving the girl out of the monster's path and putting himself in her place, proving himself to be the bravest of Ordon's children. But bravery only gets you so far. Barnes, the owner of the Kakariko bomb shop, steps outside and comes face to face with King Bulblin, holding Colin's limp body at his side. The monster locks eyes with the bomb maker and lifts his visor. In return, Barnes lowers his and cowers behind it. Suddenly, a horse neighs in the distance. King Bulblin turns to see Link and Epona race into the village. The hero spots the monsters and the captured Colin, but doesn't slow down. He braces himself and continues to charge. King Bulblin lifts the child and laughs, turns, then speeds off into Hyrule Fields, with Epona galloping not far behind. That's where the cutscene ends, leading into a horseback battle against King Bulblin and his minions, then an epic 1v1 jousting match on the Great Bridge of Hylia. Colin is strapped to a pole on King Bulblin's Bulbo, who is much stronger and more dangerous than Epona, but ultimately Link is victorious, and the fight ends with one of the best cinematics in any Zelda boss battle. This whole sequence is one of the best parts of Twilight Princess, and the first cutscene in particular stands out to me. Not only is it yet another badass moment for Link, who arrives at the last second, it's a great look into the character of some of Kakariko's residents at this point in the game. We see Barnes and Tallow's cowardice, Beth's paralysing fear, and, of course, Colin's surprising courage and heroism at a time when it mattered most. Skyward Sword has a lot of cutscenes. The game is incredibly linear, and so story events are very defined, and often very long. And Zelda's revelations in the Temple of Hylia are no exception. A huge cutscene that takes place after Link builds the second Gate of Time to follow Zelda and Impa to the past. Link travels back through the gate to a time when the sealed temple was known as the Temple of Hylia, a time not long after the goddess' sealed demise. Impa greets you by the gate and instructs Link to pass through the great doors at the end of the hall to meet with Zelda. Link's childhood friend stands in a pillar of golden light and begins to explain what she has learned to Link. She describes the origin of the Triforce, how it led to the war with Demise, and how Hylia was forced to send her surviving people above the clouds to live on Skyloft. She explains Hylia's great plans, the creation of Fi, the spirit of the sword designed to serve her chosen hero, but more importantly, Hylia's plan to abandon godhood and reincarnate as a mortal being, as Zelda. Link listens in silence as Zelda reveals her plan. She will stay in this temple in the distant past to watch over Demise's seal, while Link returns to the present to defeat the imprisoned. Zelda assures Link that he is now worthy of claiming the Triforce, and blesses his sword, finally transforming it into the true Master Sword, a blade capable of driving back evil and defeating Demise. As Link looks on, dumbfounded, Zelda explains that in order to wield the Triforce, one must have an unbreakable spirit and overcome many trials to awaken the hero within. With her back turned to Link, she explains that this was the reason behind her travels on the surface. Link desperately fought to find and save her, but Zelda would always vanish just before the hero could reach her. But this was always the point. With Hylia's voice, Zelda confirms that she knew if it meant saving her, Link would throw himself into any danger without a moment's doubt. As part of her great plan, she used him. Racked with guilt, Zelda intends to pay the price for manipulating Link. She will remain in the past, in deep sleep for thousands of years. She turns and faces him, saying that, before everything, she was happy just spending her time hanging around with Link in Skyloft, something she wished could last forever. Finally realizing what Zelda is about to do, Link sprints towards her, clambering up the stone steps as a golden light envelops the reincarnated goddess. By the time he reaches her, it's too late. Zelda is sealed within an amber crystal. Link pounds his fists against it, but it's no use. From within, she speaks, saying that she's still her father's daughter. She's still Link's friend. She's still his Zelda. As she begins to fall into a magical sleep, Zelda asks Link one last favour. Ever since we were kids, she says, I'd always be the one to wake you up when you slept in. But this time, when all of this is over, will you come to wake me up? With that, the crystal glows once more and Zelda is gone, trapped inside in a deep sleep. Link's face falls, his usually stoic expression breaks, and, just for a moment, despair takes hold. He takes a step back and looks up at his childhood friend one last time, before turning to leave the chamber and continue his journey. This conversation between Link and Zelda is one of my favourite moments in the entire series. Their relationship is an absolute highlight of the game, and this single cutscene does so much. It explains Zelda's complicated but essential backstory and Link's purpose, but still packs a huge emotional gut punch. It's one of the best moments in any Zelda game, but in my opinion, it's still not quite the best. The Wind Waker is set centuries after Ocarina of Time's adult ending, in a timeline where no hero appeared to stop a new assault on Hyrule. With no other choice, the gods sent a great flood from the heavens, burying Hyrule, its king, and Ganondorf himself below the waters of the Great Sea. Those who clung to Hyrule's mountaintops began new lives on the vast ocean, and after generations, Hyrule and Ganondorf were forgotten. Until they weren't. Ganondorf's return was sudden and violent. He sent the Helmarock King to kidnap young girls with pointed ears in the hope that he could capture Princess Zelda. He kills the sages of Earth and Wind, thereby limiting the Master Sword's sacred power, and, in the sunken halls of Hyrule Castle, is eventually successful in kidnapping Tetra, who is secretly Princess Zelda. It's in this forgotten kingdom at the bottom of the sea that the game's final battle takes place, atop Ganondorf's Dark Tower. When Link climbs to the roof, Ganondorf already has Zelda in his grasp, and so the three pieces of the Triforce are united once again. Link finds Ganondorf standing over Zelda's unconscious body. Without even looking at the boy, Ganondorf begins to speak. He explains that his people lived in a vast desert, a place where the wind burned unbearably hot in the day and terribly cold at night, a wind that meant death. Ganondorf envied the green fields of Hyrule, a land whose people knew more than just suffering and ruin. He explains that now the three pieces of the Triforce are together, power, wisdom, and courage in his grasp, the gods will have no choice but to answer his wish. Suddenly, Ganondorf lunges towards Link and viciously beats him to the ground. He assures Link that he won't kill him, that he just needs the Triforce of Courage, and finally, the three pieces begin to glow. The Triforce itself appears. Ganondorf laughs and moves towards the sacred artifact. Finally, his work is finished. Everything he wants is within his reach. He raises his hand to the sky and screams at the gods, commanding them to release Hyrule from imprisonment under the sea, for the kingdom to see sunlight once more, under his control. But at the last second, something changed. Another hand rests on the Triforce. King Daphnis, Hyrule's old king, appears from nowhere to lay claim to the wish. Before Ganondorf can react, Daphnis makes a different request of the gods, to instead let Hyrule die, to let the ocean wash away the old kingdom and its memories, to give the new generation a chance to live their own lives, free from the burdens of their ancestors. The Triforce shines with radiant light as the magically suspended water above them begins to fall. In great pillars and falls, the ocean above starts to collapse, and Ganondorf laughs. It's not a happy laugh, or even the laugh of an evil mastermind on the edge of victory. It's the laugh of a broken man, a helpless laugh by a man who is truly lost. Thunder roars and the sea falls around them, but still Ganondorf laughs, his head thrown back and his entire body shaking. Every plan he had made, every person he killed was all in vain. His dreams are dead, along with Hyrule. But Ganondorf refuses to die alone. He scorns the idea of a future for Link and Zelda, just as the princess wakes and stands by Link's side. The Gerudo calmly, slowly draws two swords, as he explains that he will show the pair just what future and hope they have, and how much their Triforce was worth. With that, the final battle begins, one of my favourite boss fights in the series, one that makes use of both Link and Zelda, and ends with Link burying the Master Sword so deep in Ganondorf's skull that he turns to stone. The game's closing cutscenes are also incredibly good, an emotional send-off with the King of Hyrule and the pirates setting sail in search of new lands. But for me, the Wind Waker's best cutscene, and my favourite cutscene in all of Zelda, is what comes just before the game's final battle. Ganondorf's monologue is a fantastic insight into his character. The story he tells is just relatable enough that you can sympathise with his cause, but the whole time it feels like he's trying to justify his terrible crimes. Ganondorf may have a real reason to hate the gods, but his true goals are revealed to be ultimately self-centered. His people are long dead, as is Hyrule, but still he can't let go, and commands the gods to resurrect the kingdom's drowned corpse and give it to him. He claims that it was the suffering of his people that led him to grow jealous of Hyrule, but the story just masks his insatiable lust for more and more power. The Wind Waker's Ganondorf is perhaps the best villain of any Zelda game, and his final moments are a huge reason why. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a like or subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. What did you think of my picks for the best Zelda cutscenes? How would your takes differ? Let me know in the comments. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.